welcome into NewsWire here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Ranieri, stepping in for Craig Mish, and we've got some leading headlines here on this Wednesday now, February the 21st, and we're going to start with the news yesterday that two men have been charged with murder in the Kansas City Chiefs Parade Day shooting. Dominic Miller, Lindell Mays are both being charged with second-degree murder, 2 counts of armed criminal action, and unlawful use of a weapon that killed 1 person and injured 22 others. They are each being held on a $1 million bond. Authorities are saying more charges are quite possible, and this is in addition to the 2 juvenile arrests that happened a few days ago. That remains a very fluid investigation. I'm sure we'll have more as those details come available. In the meantime, college football, well, they have announced plans for how the new 12-team playoff format, well, how's it going to work next season? Because it feels like everything has changed. And that's because, well, it has. We learned that the College Football Playoff Board of Managers, try saying that 3 times quick, unanimously approved a 5+7 format. Now, it sounds really, really fun, but it's really rather pretty simple. This 5+7 format will guarantee the 5 highest ranked conference champions. They will automatically be included into the expanded 12-team field. That's all going to happen this fall, but they're also going to include, hence the +7, the next 7 highest ranked teams as determined by the playoff committee. Now, what do we do with Notre Dame? Everyone always asks, well, what do we do with Notre Dame since they are not in a conference? Well, if they get the first seed, if they are the number 1 team in the country when it's all said and done, well, they automatically play games in this 5+7 format as if they were the number 5 seed. 5+7, that model is now going to be your approved 12-team college football playoff. So get ready. It'll take a little while to get used to, but no doubts we will all be getting behind it as long as our favorite team isn't the 13th best team in the country. And also last night, we had another number 1 team fall in college basketball. Number 15, Creighton, exacted a little bit of revenge last night by beating the living snot out of number 1 UConn, 85-66, and quite honestly, it was never a close game. And this is a little revenge because Creighton, well, they got the snot beat out of them by UConn about a month ago. So Creighton was more than happy to snap UConn's 14-game winning streak. And let's be realistic here, with just a few weeks remaining in the regular season, it feels like there is no clear consensus best team in the country yet. And we're going to talk to our good friend Michael DeCourcy of the Sporting News about this coming up in our next segment. But in other news, have you heard Major League Baseball pitchers, catchers, position players, spring training is off and running? And we learned yesterday that Ahmed Rosario and the Tampa Bay Rays have agreed to a 1-year, $1.5 million contract. The Rays made the announcement yesterday. And they also made room for Rosario on their 40-man roster by placing rehabbing right-handed pitcher Drew Rasmussen on the 60-day injured list. Baseball is in the air. Also, baseball is happening for Jason Dominguez. He is now throwing. He is at that part of the Tommy John surgery stage in which he is allowed to throw, which is great. The switch hitting number 2 prospect is working his way back from Tommy John surgery that was performed in September. So good news for Jason Dominguez. And of course, got to throw some 60 feet. It's going to be a little while. It usually takes a little while, but they are hoping he's going to be able to have some dry non-contact swings early next week as well. So good news there for Mr. Dominguez. In the meantime, Dodger fans jumping up and down Shohei Ohtani will remain on track to start as a designated hitter when the Dodgers open the season in South Korea. And oh, by the way, the other two major additions that joined him there for the Dodgers, Yamamoto and Tyler Glasnow. Well, it appears that they are currently on track to start that 2-game Seoul series against their division rival San Diego Padres. That's going to begin March 20th and March 21st, the kind of official, unofficial start of the Major League Baseball season is exactly 1 month away. And Dave Roberts seems very, very excited. And again, fans are jumping up and down for the Dodgers as they got to watch Ohtani take BP and smash the ball out of the ballpark there. So it's a lot of fun, I think, ahead here for Dodger fans. Maybe not so much fun for the Boston Red Sox fans. And if anybody knows it, it's Rafael Devers, who expressed a lot of disappointment with the Red Sox when he was asked what the team needs. He came back and said, well, everyone knows what we need. And on the front office, he said, well, they need to make adjustments to help us to win. Good luck with that, Rafael. The Red Sox season win total hovering around that 79 games. I don't see how they're getting 80 wins this year. That just might be me. Also, we learned here that the NCAA president, Charlie Baker, not necessarily in favor of additional transfer limits. Baker is not in favor of rules or federal laws that could place new limits on the way college athletes transfer between schools. Now, he also has absolutely no sympathy for the many coaches who have publicly complained about the difficulties in maintaining these rosters of theirs in this new era of college sports, which, of course, carries fewer restrictions on player transfers and allows for NIL deals that have proved to be pretty much incentives for players to consider leaving teams after 6 months. Baker, as well as other leaders in college sports, have petitioned Congress for help in regaining some control over the future of college sports. And between the legal challenges to the NCAA rules, several of the bills that Congress has put forward will include provisions that make it more difficult for athletes to transfer. And whether or not that sees the light of day, to be continued, and stay tuned. We got a lot more to get to here on NewsWire, including some talk about college basketball. We'll do that next here on The Grid.
Best player in the NBA until proven otherwise. Like, you have that guy on your team, you win 50 games, it's really that simple.
There is voter fatigue, and I think that is the only thing you have to be careful about when you deal with the NBA is there voter fatigue in regards to who should win the MVP? When you look at the odds, and obviously you get, no Halliburton.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
What do we do with the Nets, though? Because this team is hot garbage. Poor Jacques Vaughn. Talk about just wrong place, wrong times.
I mean, the reason that they parted ways with Jacques Vaughn in the first place, this is a team that, yes, they had Kyrie and KD at the beginning of the year last year, but they were still a team that made the playoffs. They were still a team that took the game off the 76ers. And going into the All-Star break, they weren't even in the play-in picture.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
That's been to a sporting event. The atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into NewsWire here on the SportsGrid Network. I'm Joe Ranieri in for Craig Mish here today, and plenty going on in the world of college sports. A great slate of college basketball tonight. We've got plenty of headlines to get to there, but also, as we told you there at the top, a new 12-team college football playoff. Well, it is upon us. It'll be alive and well come this fall. And here to try to make heads or tails of it all is our good friend Michael DeCourcy of the Sporting News. And Michael, we were joking because it should be called the 5+7 plus whatever Notre Dame is doing because people are continuing to be worried about what happens with this model. Though it's the five, it's the five champions of the big conference. I don't know. Let them be the number one team, and we never have to worry about Notre Dame not being included here. But what do you think of this new model they just approved for this upcoming 12-team playoff?
I have been literally waiting for this my entire life. And as you could tell, that's a pretty long time. It's been absurd that college football has existed as the only sport in America, possibly the only sport on the planet. I haven't checked every country on the planet, but possibly the only sport in the world that doesn't have a real champion, that votes on it or selects the teams that get to compete for it. It's just nonsense, and it's been nonsense forever. And they convinced the 2, 3, 4 generations of people that that's the way it should be done, because it's the best thing for college. It's never been the best thing for college football. It doesn't make the most money. It doesn't reward the players correctly. It doesn't provide a genuine champion. It's been nonsense since the AP put the poll out in 1939, and now it finally goes away. Now every team in college football knows what it has to do to enter. I'll accept maybe Notre Dame, but that's another story. If you are in a conference, you know you have to be the best in your conference. If you're in one of the group of 5 conferences that isn't likely to have an automatic bid, then you know you have to be the best of those teams. So you probably have to win all your games. But at least you know going in what you have to do. And it's been just delayed way too long. When they started the college football playoff, it should have begun as this. And, of course, then it would have been the 6+6. But the Pac-12's death, or I don't know, maybe it's not dying, but it's on life support. Its demise, its decline has led it to 5+7, and that's the right way to go.
Yeah. It's you're right. It's been a while. We'll see how it all plays out. Because, listen, college basketball figured it out a long time ago, right? With the tournament, hey, let the chips, although there really aren't Cinderellas, ultimately we learn in the tournament when it's all said and done, it usually comes down, to the best teams in the country is ultimately who plays for a national championship. But I got to tell you, the level playing field, I don't know what to make of this year. It feels like college basketball. We watch Creighton upend, number 1 UConn, the champs again. We haven't had a repeat champion, Mike, since the 2007-8 Florida Gators with Billy Donovan. And to think with all the rule changes that, have gone on with the NIL deals and the transfer rules, to think that UConn's even in a spot right now to be able to do it during this is kind of impressive. But is it really a big deal that they lost in Omaha last night?
It's not a big deal. It's not going to cost them a number 1 seed. It actually could help them. You don't want to lose a bunch on the way into March, but maybe you don't also want to win a bunch. I think back to 1996, the best college basketball team in the time that I've been covering, starting back in 1986. The best college basketball team that I've seen was 1996 Kentucky, and they did not lose from November 28th or something. They played in a neutral court game against UMass and Marcus Camby and John Calipari and lost. And they did not lose another game until the SEC championship game in the tournament. And there was the sense that losing that game helped them, that to carry a winning streak like that into March Madness probably would have been a problem. So we saw Purdue go down on Sunday to a lesser team, certainly, than Creighton. And last night we saw UConn go down to a fantastic offensive team that is very capable on defense as well in Creighton. So you obviously don't want to lose by 30 or whatever it ended up as, but it's not bad for them to take a loss.
Yeah, Matt Painter in the tournament. Easy money. What could go wrong? Let's talk about some of these games coming up here tonight, Mike, as we've got a couple of top 25 teams going at it. And Alabama and Florida, I believe it's the only one that we have where they actually have numbers in front of them. I don't know, just play the over. That's the way I'm looking at it. I don't know. Is there any defense being played in this game at all, you think?
That's a great question. Florida could not stop Kentucky at all, but managed to get into the 90s and win the game a few weeks ago. Florida's been really good on the road as an underdog. They've in the SEC, they've done a really good job of handling that circumstance. It's a little bit scary going into Alabama after what they did to Texas A&M, but Texas A&M maybe said that it's more about them after what happened last night in Arkansas. So I think you can have some degree of confidence that Florida can go in there and be competitive. It'll be a tough one. Florida's very good, but Alabama has been so destructive that it is. You do have to be a little leery, even with Florida's history of playing successfully on the road.
Yeah, poor Buzz. I don't know how he has any hair left. I really don't. Duke is, I'll tell you where there won't be any defense played on Miami's side here tonight against Duke, number 8 Duke, taking on Miami. Listen, depth is a problem. Injuries are a problem for Miami. Nigel Pack, last-minute scratch there over the weekend. Their starting 5 are as good as any starting 5. The problem is, after that, good luck here. Do they have enough to keep it close with Duke?
Well, I think what it says, what recent history has said, is that they shouldn't. That Duke should go down there and win comfortably. Duke should be on an ascent at this point, and we saw that. We saw that eventually. We saw Florida State that the game Jared McCann had was just tremendous, and we've been waiting for that kind of outburst. Now, does he follow it up with another? I think it would really hurt Duke if he goes out and he goes back to being sort of just another guy. I mean, he needs to be a guy. He needs to be one of the dudes that make a difference for Duke, and so I think this is a really important game for him. And as a result for them, because if he comes back out, I mean, he's not going to make 8 threes in the first half again, but if he comes back out and puts a real performance on the floor like he did on Saturday, I think Duke can feel really good about progressing toward March and making a run in the NCAAs.
Are you buying that maybe Calipari finally got through to these kids defensively? We're going to learn that pretty quickly here tonight against LSU.
Yeah, I think part of it, Joe, is not so much getting through to them, but working around what the limitations are. They're starting a bigger lineup now. Adu Thiero being healthy has helped that. Playing Justin Edwards and Adu together, along with Onyenso up front. It's the biggest front court that they play all year. And the last two teams that have played against them got less than 0.9 points per possession against a team that has regularly been giving up 1.1. So I think that the defense is fixed, but they have to keep grinding or we'll see it go right back the other way.
Yeah, they can certainly score with anybody here. It's going to be a good one. Great slate here tonight. Michael DeCourcy, we appreciate the time. As always, NewsWire continues here on the Grid.
Nikola Jokic is the best player in the NBA until proven otherwise. Like, you have that guy on your team, you win 50 games, it's really that simple.
There is voter fatigue, and I think that is the only thing you have to be careful about when you deal with the NBA is there voter fatigue in regards to who should win the MVP? When you look at the odds, and obviously you get, no Halliburton.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
What do we do with the Nets, though? Because this team is hot garbage. I mean, poor Jacques Vaughn. Talk about just wrong place, wrong times.
I mean, the reason that they parted ways with Jacques Vaughn in the first place, this is a team that, yes, they had Kyrie and KD at the beginning of the year last year, but they were still a team that made the playoffs. They were still a team that took the game off the 76ers. And going into the All-Star break, they weren't even in the play-in picture.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
That's been to a sporting event. The atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
welcome back in here. NewsWire on the Sports Grid Network. I'm Joe Ranieri in for Craig Mish here today. And we got a lot going on, certainly on the legal front when it comes to sports betting here. And nobody better to get us caught up than Pat Evans here of the Legal Sports Report stepping in. And, Pat, it's funny. It's all of these headlines that we've got today. It feels like maybe 4 months ago or so, you and I spoke about it. We were thinking maybe like Alabama, for instance, might actually get their act together and get something done before long. And are we close now with Alabama getting it done?
Yeah. Heading into the new year, I mean, you look at a map of legal sports betting states. There's a giant hole down there in the southeast: Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina. Mississippi only has retail sports betting. And so, it's kind of, when are these states going to get it together? And it looked heading into the session that Alabama was going to do this. And there's still certainly a chance that they do. But, it's always started in the Senate and occasionally has passed the Senate and gone to the House. And the House vote, it dies in the House. Well, this year, House leadership took it by the reins and led a sports betting bill, a comprehensive gaming bill, all the way through the House very quickly, within like 2 weeks of the session starting up. And so that left a lot of people really optimistic about this. And, the senator who has been the lead sponsor the last couple of years before the session told me, if they get it into the Senate, I'll get it through. I'm confident we have the votes. Well, last week after this happened, now he's simply optimistic that he's going to get the votes. There's been some new wrinkles that have emerged on the side of the bill, not necessarily anything to do specifically with the gaming bill, but maybe where the funds go or just the general opposition that you see on either side of the aisle. And so this is a little bit less optimistic I am than I was, right when it passed the House, when I thought, well, hey, the Senate's done it before and the House has now gotten their piece of the puzzle done. So we'll see where it goes. I've got a couple sources telling me they're still happy with where it is. They're kind of thinking that maybe they dropped the casino package part of it because there's, 7 casinos that could be legalized as part of the package, and you get the lottery because they're one of 5 states that don't have a lottery. And sports betting gets, maybe lottery and sports betting get shoveled through still. And that's just kind of where we're at, is we're kind of seeing where the Senate irons out these wrinkles and if anything happens. And if they get it done, it could put some pressure on Georgia, which is kind of, again, another state we're looking at to kind of get things together because of that big hole in the southeast. And right now it kind of looks like we're shaping up for a very similar end in Georgia, where sports betting ends up kind of being a proxy war for other issues between the Republicans and Democrats. And it might die because of this proxy war. Again, who knows actually what happens? This is, politics at the state level are pretty much unpredictable no matter what. Something can look like 100% shoo-in, and it falls apart because of some random thing that happens behind the scenes. But again, Alabama has made a step it hasn't before, passing the House. So there is certainly lots of optimism still out there that they can get it the last, 10 yards or however you want to look at it on a football field.
Is there any idea as far as the amount of operators that might be heading to Alabama if all goes well here? Or is it, we'll get to North Carolina here in a second, which is just all over the place. But is there any idea? Are we talking about a handful? Is it what are they looking at as far as the number of operators going to Alabama?
At the moment, it looks like a straight, open market. You apply to the lottery for a license, and if you're qualified, you get in. So, I would expect the major players get in. It would probably kind of look like a Kentucky where there were tons of open slots, and I think there's only 7 or 9 at the moment in Kentucky. We've seen this market thin out quite a bit over the last couple of years, and the big operators are consolidating, where I think the top 4 or 5, have 90% of the market, and including the big 2, FanDuel and DraftKings, have, I think, about 60 or 70. So, it's kind of a thing where, do they want in? Do they believe it's a market worth it? Then jump in. So they'll have the big operators for sure if it legalizes.
All right. So there's no limitations there. So hopefully Alabama gets online. I don't know. North Carolina has been head scratching. You and I trying to get professional league sponsors for this and that. I mean, the list of things you had to and hoops you had to jump through in North Carolina, and it appears that Caesars. You were able to bet in person at a Caesars Sportsbook, but the app is now available. Is that what we're hearing?
So in North Carolina, we've got the launch date, the official launch date for online sports betting. That's March 11th. On March 1st, users will be able to sign up for their accounts and deposit money. But yeah, Caesars has a partnership with the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, and through that, they have their physical retail books at a couple casinos in the state. So sports betting is legal in North Carolina, but it's only at 3 sports books, 2 of which are Caesars. And today, the North Carolina Lottery Commission firmed up the tribal agreement that will allow the tribes to operate in sports betting. So the tribes are now also two viable partners for North Carolina access, and Caesars, of course, already had that in place. So this is just kind of a formality. And the commission did a couple other tiny steps approving, their voluntary self-exclusion program, a couple forms for complaints and error reporting, just kind of shoring up all the details they need to be in place in time for their launch next month. And I mean, we're just counting down the days. It's 3 weeks, not even. I don't know how to do calendar math, but they're only a few weeks away from launch. So North Carolinians are probably pretty excited. They're going to, again, have the big boys in there with DraftKings and FanDuel and BetMGM, and I can name them all, Bet365. Of course, Underdog, it will be their first official sports betting state. They're certainly a known DFS operator out there, but they're actually getting in the sports betting game now in North Carolina and then presumably Ohio, where they also have a license. So it's going to be a fun market to look at, and it launches the day before the ACC tournament. Have to imagine there's going to be plenty of basketball action down there in the Tar Heel State.
Gee, you think? We've got some. There's going to be a few people. They're going to be interesting to see how that works out. But up in I believe in your neck of the woods here, I keep hearing that maybe the next state to actually go full board and get everything legalized is Minnesota. Is that still on track here by the end of the year?
Yeah, so the past 2 years, I've gone in very bullish on Minnesota. Last year, of course, it didn't work out. They got it pretty close. I mean, I've been told by various industry sources there is no more lobbying to be done. Lawmakers want this to happen. Now, the problem is the tribes would have sports betting, or they want sports betting exclusivity, and the DFL party, which is essentially the Democrats, want tribal exclusivity, and they have control of both chambers of the House and the governor's office. And the Republicans, who still do hold some sway, because, of course, there's parts of both parties that don't want sports betting, so you need votes on both sides. They want the horse racing tracks involved. And the horse racing tracks, of course, want to be involved. And so there's negotiating going on behind the scenes between the tribes and the tracks, trying to come up with the right, model to go forward. We left off last year with a big chunk of revenue sharing kind of out there to see where we're going. And we're going to get our first hearing tomorrow in a committee that is bringing back a bill that is still in play from last year, which is Rep. Stevenson's bill, which he's been the lead kind of charge from the DFL party, very close relationship with the tribes, and trying to figure out where this kind of can come together. And like I said, everybody on the legal side apparently wants this in Minnesota. The Republican Party wants it. The DFL wants it. The governor wants it. The tribes, I would assume, want it. And so it's just kind of a tug of war right now in the negotiating battle and seeing where we end up. Minnesota came close a couple years ago, too, when the Republicans were in charge. So this is a state that a lot of people are saying this is kind of the shoe-in of the states that are left. But again, they keep getting close and not getting there. But could this year be different? Certainly plausible. But yeah, the South, it maintains the best to get any sort of legalization done. Mississippi, I think, looks good to get their online sports betting live. Of course, they have retail sports books at their casinos, so they already have legal sports betting. But they might be the best odds to get something actually through all the way. But to legalize sports betting flat, Minnesota, I think, is number one.
What's the final tally here? Do we know? I mean, how many outstanding states are there that do not have some sort of form of legalized betting? Do we know?
There are 38 states with some form of legal sports betting, and Washington, D.C., of course. And then there's a few states that, we're never going to see, I think, like Utah, maybe Idaho.
Right.
Hawaii's got a few bills and has had a few bills over the years, but they have no legal gambling. So there's a few states that you'll never see. And then some that are just taking their sweet time to figure it all out.
Yeah, and making it more complicated than it needs to be, quite honestly there. Pat Evans, great stuff as always here, my friend. Hopefully next time we talk with you, Minnesota will be well on their way to having sports betting in Alabama and the rest as we move along here. So enjoy, Pat. NewsWire will be back right after this here on the SportsGrid Network.
Is the best player in the NBA until proven otherwise. Like, you have that guy on your team, you win 50 games, it's really that simple.
There is voter fatigue, and I think that is the only thing you have to be careful about when you deal with the NBA is there voter fatigue in regards to who should win the MVP? When you look at the odds, and obviously you get, no Halliburton.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
What do we do with the Nets, though? Because this team is hot garbage. I mean, poor Jacques Vaughn. Talk about just wrong place, wrong times.
I mean, the reason that they parted ways with Jacques Vaughn in the first place, this is a team that, yes, they had Kyrie and KD at the beginning of the year last year, but they were still a team that made the playoffs. They were still a team that took the game off the 76ers. And going into the All-Star break, they weren't even in the play-in picture.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
That's been to a sporting event. The atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into NewsWire here on the Sports Grid Network. As we had mentioned earlier, there is baseball in the air here as pitchers, catchers, position players, spring training off and running just a month away from opening day. So who better to take a look here at maybe some of these future odds across Major League Baseball than our good friend Ben Stevens. And Ben, what do you got for us here today?
Joe, spring training is here. Hope springs eternal in Major League Baseball. Spring training games just about to start as we get you set for 2024 all across MLB. We look at the pennant prices in both the American League and the National League, and of course the World Series championship odds entering a new year in baseball. We start in the AL where the pinstripes are loaded, but the Yankees and Aaron Judge not the favorites exactly to win the American League pennant. Plus 390 for the New York Yankees, 10 cents behind the Houston Astros. The Stros enter this season the favorites to win the American League at plus 380. How about their in-state foes in the same division in the reigning World Series champs? That would be the Texas Rangers, nearly $3 back from the top two, a plus 650 number. The number one seed in the American League, the upstart Baltimore Orioles, who won more than 100 games a season ago, a 7-1 price. Fourth best around the AL, the Minnesota Twins, hailing from the American League Central, a 9-1 number, and the Mariners only $1 back at 10-1. Of course, Joe, as we focus on the Bronx Bombers, it has been since 2009, nearly 15 years now, when the Yankees won their last World Series back in 2009, since they've even won an American League pennant or appeared in a World Series. Adding Juan Soto, is this the team to get it done up in the Bronx? Now to the National League, where the story of the offseason wasn't necessarily the Atlanta Braves, a plus 250 price for Ronald Acuna Jr., the reigning NL MVP, and his Atlanta squad. It was the LA Dodgers. Yamamoto, Shohei Ohtani, and everybody the Dodgers brought in, as well as Tyler Glasnow, to make it the most loaded roster we have seen in some time around MLB. Plus 165 for LA. The Dodgers already a short favorite. Joe, think about that number. Plus 165, nearing even money before we've even had a single pitch in 162 games in a Major League Baseball regular season in the random sport that is baseball. How about the reigning National League pennant winners all the way down to the bottom of this list, 18-1 on Arizona. A couple of teams from the National League Central, the Redbirds and the Cubs, 16-1, 17-1 respectively, and the Philadelphia Phillies, who have factored in the National League pennant race each of the past two seasons, that 8-1 price on the Phils. Now we go to the World Series market, where, Joe, you are going to see the reigning World Series champs and Corey Seager at a 14-1 price, but we must pay attention to this number for the Dodgers. Plus 320 for LA, only just over $1 behind the Atlanta Braves at plus 450, $2.50 on to any team from the American League. We see the Astros and the Yankees here, 7-1 for Houston, 8-1 for New York. That's where the odds stack up, Joe, as we enter a new year in Major League Baseball.
All right, Ben, appreciate it. Getting excited here. Major League Baseball, it is back here. And we've got much more, though, coming up, because when it comes to the world of sports and media, nobody has their finger on the pulse better than our good friend Simon Applebaum joining us here. And I've been waiting this week, Simon, to talk to you because I just can't wait to hear what the numbers were for this past weekend's All-Star game there, the NBA in Indy, which I thought Indy, great host city. I thought there were parts of the weekend that were phenomenal for fans who, had access to their favorite players, really did. But that game, what did the numbers end up coming out looking like?
Well, that game, Joe, was 5.3 million people watching this past Sunday night. And keep two things in mind. Number one, it was a game that was simulcast on TBS, TNT, and True TV. So it's not all TNT, which usually would cover that game solo. And secondly, it was the second lowest rated NBA All-Star game ever. It topped last year, which was the worst, with had 4 million people. The All-Star Saturday night, which I believe included that wonderful and maybe the best part of All-Star weekend, the wonderful three-point shooting contest between Steph Curry and Sabrina Ionescu, 5.4 million people watching. And yet, that was still below what the NFL All-Star Game did just a few weeks ago with the Pro Bowl and other such All-Star games as well. So it was nowhere near the viewership of the last couple of years when it came to All-Star viewership. I think there were a couple of problems with it. Number one, first of all, the game was atrocious, absolutely atrocious. For a player to have 51 points off the bench like Karl-Anthony Towns did, to have players have no competitiveness whatsoever on both sides of the ball is really ridiculous. When people are throwing up three-point shots from over half court, you knew there was a problem. I was talking to you before the break. Given the fact this was an Olympic year, and we have the Olympics coming up in Paris, why couldn't Adam Silver and the NBA do an NBA team with non-NBA players from around the world? That would have been, I think, more competitive. It would have brought the fire out in the NBA players, and you could even make it better by saying, okay, we're going to have this NBA versus the world game, winner take all, $1 million prize, that's it. You lose, you lose. You don't get anything. Something else also about this game and about All-Star Weekend. It was badly promoted by TNT. It was badly promoted by ESPN. There was an interesting Rising Stars game, another one of the most best parts of the weekend. Nobody knew about it because why? It wasn't promoted. You didn't see promo spots. You didn't see press releases. You didn't see anything. And what's also interesting about TNT in particular is they seem to have had over the last year an unfortunate habit of not promoting their sports programming, which is, by the way, the only original programming, Joe, that they have. Whether it's the NBA, whether it's National Hockey League games, including the Stanley Cup last year, which was the first, by the way, ever on cable television, not on broadcast. The Invesco QQQ college basketball game, that's the black college game. Again, nobody knew about it unless you happen to turn it on that night. And don't forget, March Madness is coming up, which, by the way, TNT or TBS will have the Final Four under the biannual agreement they have with CBS. So you have to wonder what is going on with TNT in terms of promoting their original programming, which is largely sports. Something has to happen because this cannot go on if TNT wants to be a viable force in covering the NBA. Because don't forget, that contract comes up next season, and we're already starting to see the feedback about negotiations.
Yeah, well, it kind of feels like I think we have a pretty good idea with their stance on maybe continuing with that partnership there. Speaking of partnership, Simon, apparently Fubo TV feels like the odd man out here as they are trying to prevent a pretty big 3-network streaming service trying to come together.
Yes, this joint venture is raising all sorts of questions, and Fubo is not the only people thinking of legislation. Yesterday, they filed the antitrust lawsuit against ESPN, Disney, Fox, and Warner Bros. Discovery. But the Justice Department is looking at possibility of taking action. The Federal Trade Commission might take it. And even some of the professional sports leagues are up in arms, like the NFL is like saying, how the heck could you put this together and not tell us you were going to do it? And not the only major sports league, by the way, is thinking about that as well. The problem is, and this is what Fubo has to prove, is number one, you are making sure that we cannot do our thing. You're taking our idea of a mega sports channel or mega sports-oriented channel bundle, and you are trying to take us under the bus and eliminate us from competition. Now, in order for Fubo to prove this antitrust cases are hard to prove, Joe. You've got to have the documentation. You can't have hearsay. You must have documentation that shows not only, A, that this is definitely a direct hit against you, but also, as Fubo is saying, this is not just this is the culmination of what's been taking place between our network or our service and these companies for a long time. That when we tried to get them on our bundle, they gave us, we had to charge higher rates in order to get the service, that they prevented us from taking networks at certain times, and so on and so forth. So Fubo's got a very important antitrust road to hoe. It's not going to be easy, but they may have a case. And if the Justice Department comes in, or the leagues come in, or the cable operators come in and say, this is not kosher, there may be a big problem with getting this joint venture off the ground when they say they will in the fall. One thing I think, a mistake I think that these folks made, I'm talking about Disney, Fox and Warner Bros. Is the nonchalant way they introduced this. They came out with a press release. They had, oh, by the way, we're doing this on their conference calls when Disney and Fox had their financial reports. Bob Iger sort of made like a secondary subject. We had the interview with Julia Boston last week about it. They sort of, what they should have done was have a press conference in New York, the way they might have done, let's say, a couple of decades ago, get the press together and really explain this deal, this joint venture, and how it was going to work and why it was important to them that they do it. They didn't, and now they may be paying the price in terms of this FUBO antitrust suit.
Yeah, it's boy, I can't wait to see how that turns out. But when the NFL feels like they haven't been included, it's interesting stuff there. Tell me, Simon, I know ESPN and Disney are bringing back Big City Greens. Explain to us what that is and what we're going to be seeing.
Well, Joe, this is another example of this growing trend of alternative telecast, and especially alternative telecast aimed at kids and families. Now, last spring, ESPN ran a hockey game involved the New York Rangers and the Washington Capitals. And while the game was going on live, ESPN Plus, Disney Channel, Disney XD, and Disney Channel, Disney Plus, all ran an animated version which was set in the world of Big City Greens, the most popular animated series. So they have the characters, they would have the NHL players, and it would be all animated in real time. Well, they're going to do it again this year, this time with the game that ESPN's running next month with the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Boston Bruins. In this case, there'll be some interesting new wrinkles. First of all, they're going to use 2 tracking systems that will allow them to animate in real time. Secondly, Sidney Crosby, the captain of the Penguins, Drew Marchand, the Boston Bruins, they will be animated along with the characters of Big City Green and their fellow team players. Third, and this is very interesting, Drew Carter and the rest of his ESPN announcing team are going to be wearing virtual reality headsets, and that's going to allow them to be animated in real time as the players skirt up and down the ice. And finally, as a between periods feature, between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3, you're going to have a skills competition involving the Big City Green players. So they're going to pull out all the stops to make this as fascinating for kids and their families to watch. And again, Joe, another example of this growing trend of alternative telecasts to the main telecast, whether it's regular season or it's playoff or championship.
Yeah, real-time animation. It's amazing. Real quick, Simon, what is the latest with a women's sports network, maybe Professional Women's Hockey League?
Well, the PWHL doing very well with their 6 teams. The action has been terrific, and now they got a national TV contract with the Women's Sports Network. I think this is going to be their main flagship franchise, and if the PWHL plays their cards right, I think this could be the biggest and most important women's sports hockey league around, especially in 2 years from now when you have women's hockey being a major factor in the Winter Olympics.
Wow. All right. See, so it's there is plenty of opportunity for everyone when it comes to media and it comes to sports. And quick, before we get you out of here, Simon, I know that might be a Maryland sweatshirt under there, that under your blazer, and I know you have some thoughts on the recent passing.
Well, it is a Maryland Terrapin sweater, and it's in honor of Lefty Driesell, passed away yesterday, one of the great college basketball coaches of all time. If you were a student at a college, whether it's Maryland American University or I was in Washington, D.C., ACC basketball was the thing to watch on Saturday afternoons, and Lefty Driesell was a part of all of them, one of the great college coaches of all time.
Yeah, and also the founder of Midnight Madness, guys. He was the architect behind it, so loved himself some college basketball, and will certainly not be forgotten anytime soon. Simon Applebaum, appreciate the time. As always here, my friend, it keeps getting interesting in the world of media rights, and we've got you to thank for keeping us up. All right, NewsWire will close it out next here on The Grid.
Is the best player in the NBA until proven otherwise. Like, you have that guy on your team, you win 50 games, it's really that simple.
There is voter fatigue, and I think that is the only thing you have to be careful about when you deal with the NBA is there voter fatigue in regards to who should win the MVP? When you look at the odds, and obviously you get, no Halliburton.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8, right? This is going to fall 6, 7, or 8. 6 you lose, 7 you push, 8 you win. So it's going to come down to the end.
And he missed the 3, and they are not going to foul. They're not going to foul. He just drove and scored, though. Oh, they gave up a dunk with 14.1 to go.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
What do we do with the Nets, though? Because this team is hot garbage. I mean, poor Jacques Vaughn. Talk about just wrong place, wrong times.
I mean, the reason that they parted ways with Jacques Vaughn in the first place, this is a team that, yes, they had Kyrie and KD at the beginning of the year last year, but they were still a team that made the playoffs. They were still a team that took the game off the 76ers. And going into the All-Star break, they weren't even in the play-in picture.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
That's been to a sporting event. The atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back in as we look to wrap up this edition of NewsWire here on the SportsGrid Network. Much more still coming your way here today on the SportsGrid Network. The Scotty Farrell Show, Coast to Coast, in which I and Joe Lisi will be co-hosting and stepping in for Carver and for Scotty Farrell today, coming up 3 o'clock Eastern Time. Make sure you guys check that out. But on our way out of here, I thought, what better way, since it is Major League Baseball season again. Hard to wrap your head around, I know. But you got to love some of the stories coming out of spring training already, including one involving the Cincinnati Reds yesterday and their stud young players there, Elly De La Cruz, as well as their fireball pitcher there, Hunter Green. So it turns out yesterday, and if you haven't checked that video out, guys, it's well worth seeing because it, quite honestly, is the funniest thing we've seen in a long time here. De La Cruz was hitting against Hunter Green in what was like a live batting practice session yesterday, and basically fouled the ball off to the left side there, and it went into the parking lot. And again, not a big story, a foul ball, parking lot, what could go wrong? Well, nothing could go wrong except for the fact that when it was all said and done and they went to the parking lot, turns out that foul ball ended up smashing Green's SUV window on the rear driver's side, and the ball was there. And Hunter Green kept telling De La Cruz that you're paying for this. And De La Cruz told him, well, you make more money than I do. So he said, you better have, I believe, one of the window companies there on speed dial. They had some good fun with it. The video is priceless. Check it out. It's a good reminder that Major League Baseball is back, and we'll be back tomorrow with another edition of NewsWire. Until then, best of luck here today. We'll talk again soon.